A veteran walked into his grandfather's old barn, and the secret his dog uncovered inside shattered everything he thought he knew about his family. When Aaron Blake returned to the abandoned ranch he hadn't seen in 18 years, he expected dust, silence, and memories best left alone. Instead, his loyal K9, Titan, froze at the barn door, growling at something buried deep beneath the floorboards. What they unearthed that night didn't just reopen the past, it rewrote it. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? The narrow road into Sawtooth Valley twisted like an old scar carved through the mountains, each turn revealing another stretch of frostbitten pine and empty sky. Aaron Blake drove in silence, hands locked on the steering wheel, knuckles pale under the weight of memories he hadn't asked to carry. 18 years. Long enough for a man to build a new life. Long enough for him to believe he'd outrun the ghosts behind him. But as his truck rattled over the last rise, the valley opened wide before him, and everything he thought he'd left behind rose right back up in his chest. Titan shifted in the passenger seat, ears pricking forward. The Shepherd Malinois mix leaned toward the window, nose twitching with uneasy curiosity. Aaron glanced at him. "Yeah, I feel it too," he murmured, voice low. The dog wasn't wrong. Something about the land felt wrong. Too still, too cold, too quiet for late fall. The old wooden sign that once read Grayson Ranch appeared ahead, hanging crooked on its rusted chain. Titan let out a low growl the moment the truck slowed. Aaron frowned. Titan didn't growl at nothing. Combat dogs didn't waste energy. If Titan reacted, there was a reason, one Aaron couldn't see yet. When the truck rolled to a stop in front of the gate, a gust of wind cut across the valley, whistling through the bent fence posts like a warning. Aaron stepped out, boots crunching over the hard, frozen earth. The cold bit through his jacket, but it wasn't the temperature that made him tense. It was the silence. Thick, unnatural, pressing in from every direction. In Afghanistan, silence like this meant danger, ambush. A breath held before something bad happened. The gate latch resisted at first, then gave way with a sharp metallic snap. Titan hopped down from the passenger seat, landing softly, his posture alert, tail stiff. He sniffed the air, then the ground, then the wind again, taking in a scent only he understood. His hackles rose just slightly. "Easy, boy," Aaron whispered, though his own pulse had picked up. He looked around. The barn, the field, the porch. From a distance, the place looked exactly how he remembered it. Weathered, lonely, tucked under the shadow of the Sawtooth Peaks. But as he pushed through the gate and walked toward the house, something inside him twisted. It wasn't ruin that waited for him. It was order. Too much order. The porch steps didn't sag when he climbed them. The boards didn't complain under his weight. The windows, though dusty, reflected the late afternoon light like they'd been cleaned not long ago. The rocking chair where his grandfather used to sit every night, still there, still pointed toward the mountains, still steady, like someone had used it yesterday. His jaw tightened. Walter Grayson had been dead more than a month. He unlocked the front door, forcing himself to breathe through the sudden rush of anxiety that clawed up his throat. Inside, the house smelled, faintly, of pine soap. Not old, not stale. Clean. Lived in. Titan trotted in behind him, but stopped almost immediately, body rigid. He stared down the hallway, ears pinned forward, teeth just beginning to show. "What is it?" Aaron whispered, but Titan didn't move. On the table by the window sat a plate, a mug, and a folded napkin, set neatly, deliberately, as if someone had stepped away from breakfast and planned to return. A shiver worked its way down Aaron's spine. He closed his eyes and inhaled. The air was too fresh. The floors were swept, the blankets folded. No dust on the shelves, no cobwebs in the corners. This wasn't how a dead man's house should feel. A familiar ringing began crawling into his ears, the precursor to a PTSD spike. He steadied himself on the edge of the table, grounding his breath, keeping his mind from spiraling into places he didn't want to revisit. Focus. Look. Listen. Just like patrol. He scanned the living room. Nothing out of place. Nothing threatening. Just the eerie sense of a presence without a body. Titan let out another low growl and stepped closer to the hallway, nose lifted, nostrils flaring at something only he could detect. "Titan," Aaron warned gently, but the dog ignored him, muscles coiled tight beneath his coat. A shadow flickered across the far end of the hall. Aaron froze. He blinked, just once, and the shadow was gone. Maybe it had just been the light, or his nerves, or the memories that came crawling back to life the moment he stepped foot in this house. But Titan didn't imagine things, and Titan was unsettled. That alone chilled him more than anything else. He walked deeper into the room, passing the framed photographs still hanging on the wall. His grandfather in uniform. His father before he shipped out. Himself at 7 years old, holding a trout bigger than his arm. Every picture exactly where it had always been, untouched by time. He swallowed hard. 18 years away, yet the place felt like it had been waiting for him. Outside, the wind shifted again, tapping softly at the old shutters. Titan looked toward the back of the house and gave a single, short, warning bark. Aaron turned toward the sound, and for one split second, he thought he saw movement, just beyond the doorway leading to the yard. Someone, something, watching. He blinked again, heart pounding, but the doorway stood empty. Only the wind moved. But Titan kept staring, and that was enough to tell Aaron one thing. They were not alone on this land. He reached down, resting a steady hand on Titan's head. "Stay close." Titan bumped gently against his leg, as if to say, "I'm already here." Aaron stepped toward the doorway, breath tight in his chest, eyes scanning every corner of the yard beyond. Something was waiting for them out there. And it had been waiting a long, long time. Aaron stood at the open doorway, Titan pressed close to his leg, both staring into the yard as the wind swept a thin sheet of frost across the ground. The last smear of daylight faded behind the ridgeline, leaving the ranch wrapped in the kind of cold blue dusk that made every shadow look alive. A chill climbed Aaron's spine, not from the temperature, but from the sense that the land itself was holding its breath. He stepped back inside, closing the door with a soft click. Titan stayed in the center of the living room, ears up, body rigid, following something only he could hear. The house felt wrong, not abandoned, not empty, but paused, like someone had pushed life's stop button just before he arrived. Every surface was too clean. Every object was exactly where it should be. It was the kind of stillness that made a man feel watched, even when he was alone. Aaron forced himself to move, inspecting the main room with slow, deliberate motions the way he'd been trained. Titan padded beside him, each step soft but purposeful. The beam of Aaron's flashlight slid across the shelves, catching framed photos, an old rifle his grandfather kept for coyotes, and a neatly folded wool blanket draped over the arm of a chair. A thin layer of dust would have made sense, but there was none, not even on the wooden mantel above the fireplace. "Someone's been here," Aaron muttered under his breath. Titan answered with a sharp exhale, then faced the hallway that led deeper into the house. His tail stayed low, stiff, a sign Aaron had come to respect. Combat dogs rarely showed fear, but they knew danger by scent, by vibration, by instincts humans no longer possessed. The hallway stretched long and dim, the old floorboards creaking softly as Aaron took a step forward. Titan blocked him, literally pressed his body against Aaron's leg to keep him from advancing. Then the dog's gaze snapped upward. A sound came from the hallway, a soft thump, not loud, not violent, just wrong. Aaron froze mid-step, chest tight. The thump had the weight of something falling, a book maybe, or a picture frame, or something heavier. PTSD flickered at the edges of his vision. Brief flashes of doorways half lit by gunfire. Shadows hiding figures he could never fully see. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath. "Not now," he whispered to himself. He turned the flashlight beam down the hallway. Nothing moved. But Titan was trembling, not with fear, but with readiness. He was waiting for a command. "All right," Aaron whispered, steadying his grip on the flashlight. "Let's take a look." They advanced down the hall, Titan moving slightly ahead but glancing back every few steps to ensure Aaron followed. The air seemed to grow colder with each foot of distance from the front room, as though the warmth of the stove and sunlight hadn't reached this part of the house in years. Halfway down the hall, Titan stopped abruptly. A single growl rolled from his chest, low, resonant, unmistakably a warning. Aaron shone the flashlight toward the floor. There, lying on the old wooden planks, was a single object. A spoon. Just a spoon. But it hadn't been there minutes ago. Aaron crouched, heart thumping against his ribs. The spoon was clean, polished, as if it had come straight off the kitchen table. There were no dust trails, no scuffs from rolling. It was as if it had simply appeared. He looked toward the kitchen. The table was still set for one. The chair was pulled back slightly from the table, as if someone had sat there, and stood up moments before he arrived. Titan started backing up, step by step, eyes never leaving the kitchen doorway. Aaron rose slowly. "All right," he whispered, voice barely audible. "Let's not do anything stupid." He approached the kitchen entrance with Titan glued to his side. The overhead lamp flickered once, then dimmed again. Not burned out, just flickered, as if someone had tried to turn it on from a switch that didn't exist. Aaron swept the room with his flashlight. Everything was perfectly arranged, but one thing had changed. The mug that had been on the table earlier was gone. His breath caught. He scanned the countertops, the sink, the floor. Nothing. "Where the hell?" he muttered. Titan suddenly lunged toward the pantry door, barking once, a deep, explosive bark that echoed off the wooden walls. Aaron spun toward it. The pantry door was cracked open just an inch. He hadn't opened it. "Who's in there?" Aaron shouted, instinct taking over. Titan snarled, claws scraping against the floor as he braced himself, ready to spring. No answer. Aaron's throat tightened. "I'm opening the door. If someone's in there, now's the time to say something." Silence. Just the faint creak of the wind pressing against the house. He reached for the knob. Titan's bark shattered the quiet as the pantry door swung inward under Aaron's touch, and revealed nothing but dark shelves, canned food, and a broom leaning against the wall. Empty. And yet the chill in the room deepened, as if something unseen had slipped past them and vanished into the hallway. Aaron stepped back, adrenaline still pulsing through him. His voice was shakier than he wanted it to be. "All right, enough for tonight." Titan didn't protest. They returned to the living room, both on edge. Aaron sat on the old couch, Titan lying directly at his feet, but facing the hallway, refusing to look away from whatever troubled him. Minutes passed. Then a knock sounded at the door. Sharp. Sudden. Too loud in the quiet. Aaron shot upright, Titan instantly rising into a defensive stance. Aaron approached carefully, hand hovering near the drawer where his grandfather used to keep a wrench for repairs. He opened the door. A thin man in a heavy coat stood on the porch, breath steaming in the cold, eyes tired but alert. Elias Boone, the old neighbor. "Evenin', son," Elias said quietly, eyes drifting past Aaron into the dark house. "Saw a light from my place. Figured you might have come back." Aaron swallowed. "Yeah, I did." Elias's gaze hardened as he looked at Titan's stiff posture. "Dog doesn't like what he smells. Can't say I blame him." Aaron frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Elias stepped closer, voice dropping to a near whisper. "It means you shouldn't be here after dark. Not tonight, not any night, not until you know what your granddad was hiding." A gust of wind swept around them, blowing snowflakes across the porch. Elias met Aaron's eyes. "You're not alone on this land, son." The porch light flickered, Titan growled again, and the house behind Aaron creaked as if something deep inside its walls had shifted, something that had been waiting a long, long time. The sound rumbled through the wooden frame of the home, low and unsettling, like the groan of something old waking up. Titan spun toward the noise, body stiff, tail straight, a warning pressed into every line of him. Elias Boone's eyes narrowed, his breath hanging in the cold air between them. "That's your cue to stay alert," the old man muttered. "This place, it remembers things." Aaron steadied his breathing and stepped aside, letting Elias in. The door creaked shut behind them, and the house seemed to exhale, a long, slow breath, as if relieved to have witnesses. Elias scanned the living room with a familiarity that made Aaron pause. "You've been inside recently?" Aaron asked. Elias shook his head. "Not since the funeral. Didn't want to disturb anything Walter left behind." He hesitated. "Didn't want anything to disturb me either." The way he said it sent a ripple of ice across Aaron's shoulders. Titan barked once, sharp, quick, and then ran toward the back door. His nails clicked against the floor as he skidded to a halt, nose pressed to the crack beneath the doorframe. The dog growled, low and vibrating, like he sensed pressure on the other side. "What's back there?" Aaron asked. "The barn," Elias answered softly. "You haven't gone in yet?" Aaron shook his head. "You need to," Elias said, "before it comes to you." A moment of silence stretched thin between them. "Elias, what exactly am I supposed to find out there?" The old man pressed his lips together. "Something your granddad tried to keep buried." He placed a hand on Aaron's shoulder. "And something someone else never wanted found." Before Aaron could ask more, Titan pawed at the door, whining urgently. His unease was growing into full-blown panic. Aaron pulled in a steadying breath and opened the door to the yard. The cold slapped against his face, crisp and sharp. Titan darted out first, nose to the ground, leading the way across the frosty dirt toward the dark silhouette of the barn. Night had fallen fully now. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the ranch and stretching long shadows that moved like water across the field. Each step crunched beneath Aaron's boots, the sound echoing too loudly in the stillness. Elias followed behind them, his flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. "I hate night walks," he muttered. "Always something hiding where your light won't reach." Aaron ignored the comment and focused on the barn looming ahead. Even from a distance, it felt wrong. The doors were shut, but the way the boards bowed inward made it look like the building was holding its breath. Titan stopped several yards away, snarling softly before inching forward again. When they reached the barn, the smell hit them first. Oil, dust, something metallic beneath it all, like old blood long dried. Aaron swallowed. "This place hasn't been opened in years." Elias shook his head. "That's the thing. It has." Titan sniffed around the base of the door, pausing at a section where the dirt was disturbed. Prints, boot-sized, deep, recent. Aaron crouched down, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Someone was here," he whispered. "And not long ago," Elias said. "That's what I was afraid of." Aaron pulled the handle. It resisted at first, then swung open with a rusty groan that echoed through the hollow space inside. Titan darted in ahead, cautious but determined. Aaron raised his flashlight, and the beam landed on the two long shapes under thick military canvas. The crates, exactly like the ones from his nightmare-filled memories of deployment. Hard edges, heavy wood, canvas that smelled of time and sweat. The sight sent a flash of old trauma through him, catching him in the chest. His heartbeat stuttered. The barn seemed to tilt for a second, closing in. "Easy, Blake. Stay present." He forced himself to inhale deeply. Titan whined, circling the crates, his nose twitching as he caught something buried deep in their scent. His posture was wrong, lower than usual, ears pinned back. The dog wasn't just alert. He was afraid. Elias stood back, one hand over his mouth. "Lord have mercy. Walter kept these things locked up tighter than anything. Told me once that the barn wasn't a place for human eyes." Aaron stepped closer. The flashlight beam danced over the crates. Something about them felt deliberate, intentional, like they had been placed there with care, not abandoned. He reached out and touched the canvas. It was cold, damp with condensation. Titan suddenly began barking wildly, teeth bared, eyes fixed on the barn's far corner. Aaron swung his flashlight toward the direction of Titan's warning, but saw nothing except old hay bales and rusted tools. Then, from behind him, a metallic clink echoed. Aaron spun so fast the flashlight beam jittered across the floor. The padlock on the barn door. It lay on the ground, several feet away from where it had been moments earlier. He hadn't touched it. Elias swore under his breath. "This place ain't right." Aaron felt a flicker of dread, but forced himself to stay grounded. "Locks fall," he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Titan didn't believe it either. He moved beside Aaron again, pressing against his leg, trembling slightly. The dog stared at the crates with an expression Aaron had rarely seen, uncertainty mixed with sorrow. "Whatever's in these boxes," Elias whispered, "it's heavy enough to unsettle a war dog. That alone is a bad sign." Aaron ran his hand over the canvas and found the edge tucked tight. He pulled it back just a few inches, enough to see the corner of an old wooden lid beneath it. The sight of the lid made his stomach twist. He'd opened crates like this before. In the desert. In the heat. In places where the truth was never kind. He pulled his hand away, the flashlight beam trembling faintly. Titan whimpered, his nose pressed to the side of the crate. Something in there, some scent lingering in the cracks, pulled a soft, pained sound from deep in his throat. Aaron whispered, "It's okay, buddy." But Titan wasn't convinced. Neither was Aaron. Elias stepped back toward the door. "You open that now, and you're stepping into a mess Walter spent 40 years trying to keep quiet." Aaron looked at him. "Then why did he leave me a letter telling me to start here?" Elias shook his head slowly. "Because he knew someone else was already looking." The wind outside howled, rattling the barn walls. Aaron tightened his jaw, eyes locked on the crates. Something was inside them. Not just objects, not just memories. Something that had teeth, metaphorically or otherwise. Something that could rip apart a family, a legacy, the fragile piece he'd tried to rebuild since leaving the battlefield. Titan pawed the crate once, then stared up at Aaron with pleading eyes. Aaron exhaled shakily. "Tomorrow," he murmured. "We open it tomorrow, in daylight." Titan pressed his head against Aaron's knee, as if agreeing. But the barn had other ideas, because as they stepped outside, as Aaron pulled the barn doors closed, as he lifted the padlock to fasten it, the doors creaked open again. On their own. Aaron's breath caught. Elias stumbled back. Titan barked furiously. The darkness inside the barn seemed to breathe, and from deep in the shadows, something shifted. Something small, faint, but deliberate. Aaron didn't wait to find out what. He grabbed Titan's collar, ushered Elias out, and slammed the doors shut again. This time he wedged a wooden beam across the handles. The night air pressed against them, heavy and cold. Titan stared back at the barn long after they'd started toward the house. Whatever lay inside, it wasn't finished with them. Not even close. Aaron barely slept. Every time his eyes closed, the image of the barn doors forcing themselves open surfaced in his mind. Slow, deliberate, almost like a hand pushing from the inside. Titan lay on the floor beside the bed, but the dog never relaxed fully. His ears twitched at every groan of the house, and twice during the night he lifted his head and growled toward the hallway. By dawn, both man and dog were exhausted. The morning light did little to soften the tension hanging over the ranch. Fog clung to the treetops, rolling down the slope like a living thing, and the air was heavy with the kind of cold that settled deep in the bones. Aaron brewed a pot of coffee, but even the familiar smell didn't calm him. Titan stood by the back door, staring through the glass at the barn, tail stiff, body tense. Whatever had rattled them last night hadn't left the land. A crunch of gravel interrupted the quiet. A car approached, dark blue, dust on the tires, steady pace. Aaron moved to the window just as a woman stepped out, clutching a folder under her arm. Mid-40s, tidy coat, purposeful steps. Linda Porter, the attorney handling his grandfather's estate. She looked out of place against the rugged backdrop of the valley, like someone pulled out of a courthouse and dropped into the wilderness with no warning. Yet her eyes held the unspoken understanding of someone who had seen more grief than she ever let on. Aaron opened the door. Linda, didn't expect anyone this early? Linda offered a polite, subdued smile. Didn't expect to be here this early either, but your grandfather left something he wanted you to see right away. Her eyes drifted toward Titan, who stared at her with unblinking suspicion. And I thought it best to bring it before anyone else did. Anyone else? Aaron frowned. She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she handed him the folder. For you. It was sealed in his safe, marked urgent. Aaron opened it, expecting property documents or old tax forms. Instead, a handwritten letter slipped into his hand. The sight of Walter Grayson's familiar cursive, sharp, angled, unmistakably firm, hit him like a punch to the chest. He stepped back, leaning against the railing as he unfolded it. Aaron, if you're reading this, then you finally came home. There are things in that barn I never wanted you to face, but I have no choice now. Someone else is searching, and they will not stop. Start with the barn, but know the price of truth. Walter Aaron stared at the words until they blurred. Titan nudged his knee, sensing the shift in his breathing. Linda spoke softly. Walter was adamant that you receive that letter first, before anything else. What else did he leave? Aaron asked. Linda opened the folder again. A stack of documents slid forward. Maps, photocopied military forms, a yellowed report marked declassified, and a photograph tucked between them. But it was the map that caught Aaron's eye. A battlefield layout. Coordinates circled. Lines drawn in pencil. The title at the top read, Operation Deadfall, 1979. His pulse thudded in his ears. Deadfall. He had heard that name only once in his life, from his father, and his father had refused to speak of it again. Linda continued, Your grandfather requested I deliver everything to you personally. He said you would understand why. Aaron shook his head. I don't. Not yet. He spread the map across the table inside the house, Titan leaning close, sniffing the edges as though scent alone could reveal its secrets. Linda stood beside him, her eyes tracing the lines. Several names were handwritten in the margins. Among them, Blake, Thomas, KIA, Reeves, Matthew, missing Grayson, Walter, survived. One name was circled in red. Blake, Thomas Aaron's father. Next to it, scrawled in his grandfather's shaky but unmistakable handwriting, he never came home alone. Aaron swallowed hard. What does that mean? I was hoping you'd tell me, Linda replied gently. But Aaron had no answer. Titan wandered toward the hallway, barking once, a short, alert signal. Aaron tensed. The dog had found something. Titan pushed open the door to Walter's old study. Dust floated through the air where Titan's paws disturbed the floor, but the room itself was unnervingly orderly. Books lined the shelves, the old desk lamp still plugged in. On the desk sat a wooden cigar box. Titan placed his paw on it. Aaron approached, lifted the lid, and found a stack of old photos, a brass compass, a folded handkerchief, and at the bottom, a smaller envelope sealed tight. Titan whined. Aaron opened it carefully. Inside was a single faded picture. Two young soldiers, arms around each other's shoulders, smiling like the world was still simple. On the back, in rushed handwriting, Tom and Matt, brothers by choice. Deadfall, 79. His father, Tom Blake, stood on the left. The man beside him was Matthew Reeves. Titan whimpered softly, as though sensing the weight of the discovery. Linda's voice tightened. Reeves, same last name as the one in the report. Aaron nodded, his breath shallow. And the man who showed up on the map as missing. He placed the photo down and reached for the stack of documents again. A folded sheet slipped loose and drifted to the floor. Titan sniffed it and nudged it toward Aaron. It was another letter, this one typed, short, stark. Subject, recovery of remains, M. Reeves. Status, unconfirmed. Circumstances inconsistent with field reports. Witness, Grayson, Walter. Statement incomplete. Further action recommended. Linda leaned closer. Incomplete? Why would Walter leave an incomplete statement? Aaron felt the cold settle deeper into his bones. Because he didn't want anyone to know what really happened. Titan barked, suddenly, spinning toward the front window. His entire body stiffened, tail straight, hackles raised. Aaron rushed to the window. A figure stood near the fence line. Tall, still, watching, just like the silhouette in the trees the night before. Linda gasped softly. Who is that? Aaron's heart hammered. I don't know, but he's been here. The figure didn't move, not even when Aaron stepped outside onto the porch, not when Titan erupted into furious barking, not when the wind picked up and whipped the man's coat. He just watched. Then, in one swift motion, he turned and walked back toward the tree line, disappearing into the fog. Linda pressed a hand to her chest. Aaron, do you think he's after the documents? Aaron didn't answer, because the truth was settling in his gut like a stone. The barn wasn't just holding secrets. It was bait. And someone out there was willing to do anything to get to what Walter Grayson left behind. Aaron looked down at Titan, who was staring toward the trees with a low rumble in his chest. Whatever's coming, Aaron murmured, we're already in it. And Titan, eyes sharp and unwavering, stepped closer to Aaron's side, ready for whatever waited next. The fog thickened as the figure disappeared into the pines, swallowed whole by the timberline, as if the forest had simply reached out and taken him. Aaron stood still for a long moment, listening, letting the silence settle into his bones. Titan pressed against his leg, muscles taut, nose lifted as he tasted the air. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. Yet the valley felt fuller than it had in years, filled with secrets, with memories, with dangers shifting just out of sight. Aaron exhaled, a trembling breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "All right," he muttered, voice low. "We do this one step at a time." Titan barked once in agreement. Linda Porter lingered on the porch, her face pale. "Should we call the sheriff?" "No," Aaron said too quickly. Then, steadier, "Not yet. He'd ask for the documents, and I don't trust anyone until I know what I'm dealing with." Linda hesitated, but she saw something in his expression, something hardened by years in uniform, by deserts and mountains far from here, and she nodded. "Then be careful. I'll head back to town and gather everything else Walter left. If he hid more, I'll find it." The wind tugged at her coat as she walked to her car. Before closing the door, she called out, "Whatever's in that barn, Aaron, find it before someone else does." Her tires rolled down the gravel road, leaving only the crunching echo behind. Aaron turned toward Titan. "Ready?" Titan crouched low, tail stiff, then stood and trotted toward the barn, pausing only to check the air. Aaron followed close, each step heavier than the last. The sight of the barn's wide, weathered doors stirred something uneasy deep in him, like approaching a place that remembered him better than he remembered it. He pushed the door open. It groaned slowly, almost reluctantly. The stale scent of wood, dust, and old engine oil rushed out. Titan moved ahead, ears forward, scanning every corner with steady precision. Sunlight filtered through gaps in the siding, creating long beams that danced with drifting dust. And then Aaron saw them again. 2 wooden crates in the center of the barn. Large, heavy, wrapped in military canvas, untouched by time, yet disturbed by someone recently. The first crate sat perfectly square, corners tucked neat beneath its canvas covering. The second looked slightly shifted, as if someone had tested its weight. Titan circled them, nose brushing along the floorboards, pausing at spots where dust had been swept away by boot soles. His growl was soft but constant, a warning, not a threat. "Let's start with one," Aaron said, his voice barely carried in the cavernous quiet. He reached for the canvas on the first crate. It felt damp, cold, like fabric that had waited too long for someone to return. He peeled it back, the metal rings along the edge clinking faintly. Beneath it, a lid of smooth, pale wood, hand-cut, sanded, preserved. 4 long screws held it shut. Aaron's hand trembled, not with fear but with anticipation, like standing before a truth he had run from without knowing he was running at all. He pulled a screwdriver from the workbench and began turning the screws. Each one squealed as it came loose. Titan paced behind him, whining under his breath, nudging Aaron's back as if urging caution, urging patience, maybe urging him to stop. When the final screw dropped, Aaron lifted the lid. The hinges creaked, and inside, old fabric, military olive, a jacket folded with deliberate care, a rusted lantern, a tightly bound stack of papers, yellow around the edges, a soldier's dog tag. Aaron froze. He lifted the tag carefully, brushing dirt from the lettering. Reeves, Matthew L. His blood ran cold. Reeves, the missing man from the deadfall report, the man in the photo with his father. He flipped the tag over. 3 words, scratched crudely into the back, cut deep into the metal as if carved with a trembling hand. He lied. He shot me. Titan whined sharply, as though feeling the shift in Aaron's heartbeat. His paw nudged Aaron's knee, grounding him as his mind spun. "This can't be right," Aaron whispered, There's no way Walter did this. He wouldn't. But the tag felt heavy, too heavy for something so small. Like it carried the weight of a final moment, one frozen in metal, waiting decades to be found. Aaron reached for the stack of papers. They trembled slightly in his grip. He untied the twine and flipped through them. Casualty reports, maps, handwritten notes in his grandfather's steady script. One page slid loose. A debrief from 1979. Short, clinical, incomplete. Reeves, Matthew L., presumed deceased. Circumstances unresolved. Witness, Grayson, Walter. He read it twice. Titan barked suddenly, spinning toward the barn door. Aaron jerked his head up. A shadow slipped across the crack beneath the door. Light dimmed for half a heartbeat, as if someone walked past. Aaron's breath caught. Titan growled, stepping between Aaron and the entrance, but the shadow didn't return. After a tense minute, Aaron forced himself to move again. He lifted the jacket from the crate, revealing another layer beneath. More documents, a cracked leather notebook, a photograph of 3 soldiers, Walter, Thomas Blake, and Matthew Reeves, arms slung over each other's shoulders like brothers. Aaron stared at his father's face, younger, smiling, alive, and next to him, the man whose dog tag accused another of killing him. The barn felt colder, the air heavier. Titan pressed his head against Aaron's thigh, steady, warm, anchoring him to the present. "I don't know what this means," Aaron whispered, "but whatever happened back then, Walter didn't want it to stay buried." As if hearing that truth out loud shifted, something unseen, a wind swept through the barn, rattling rafters, stirring dust into spirals. The second crate's canvas rustled. Aaron swallowed. "All right," he murmured, voice low and grim. "Let's see what else you were hiding, old man." He stood, bracing himself for what was coming next. Titan stepped beside him, muscles coiled, ready, and together, man and dog moved toward the second crate, into the part of the story Walter Grayson had spent 40 years trying to keep locked away. But they never reached it. Not at first. Titan froze mid-step, head snapping toward the far wall of the barn. A low growl rolled from his chest, deep and warning, the kind of sound a dog makes only when danger is close, too close to ignore. Aaron's spine tightened. "What is it, boy?" Titan didn't blink, didn't move. His gaze locked on the sliver of daylight bleeding through the cracks in the barn boards. Then Aaron saw it too. A shadow. Not the drifting kind cast by moving clouds or shifting branches. A human shape. Still. Watching. Aaron's heart thudded in his throat. He stepped forward quietly, Titus circling to his side like a trained shield, ears pinned forward. The shadow remained motionless for several long seconds, then slipped away, swallowed by the tree line behind the barn. Just like the figure at the fence. Just like the silhouette in last night's fog. Someone had been circling the ranch. Someone patient. Someone who knew these lands just as well as Walter once did. And they weren't hiding anymore. Aaron swallowed the urge to chase. Chasing a ghost through a forest was exactly how men disappeared in places like this. Instead, he moved toward the barn door and pushed it open wide enough to peer out. Pine trees swayed in the wind, tall and dark like silent witnesses. The fog had begun to lift, stripping away its cover, and the mountains glowed faintly under the afternoon sun. No movement, no footsteps, no figure. But the feeling remained. He wasn't alone. Titan rumbled again, his fur bristling as he scanned the tree line. Then he stiffened, nose pointed toward a patch of disturbed earth beside the fence. Boot prints, large ones, fresh. Titan approached them slowly, sniffing, then recoiled with a sharp bark. Aaron knelt beside Titan, studying the print. Older style tread. Deep heel. Heavy step. Military issue, Aaron muttered, breath catching. It wasn't just someone passing through. It was someone trained. Titan pawed the dirt, uneasy, before turning toward the forest, gaze fixed on something unseen. His body vibrated with tension, the kind that once saved Aaron's life more times than he could count. In Afghanistan, Titan was never wrong, not once. Aaron straightened and reached for the rifle he kept inside the barn. He didn't raise it, only held it loosely, letting the weight remind him he wasn't defenseless. "Whoever you are," he muttered under his breath, "you're not welcome here." The wind howled in response, as if carrying some distant, whispered warning. Aaron returned inside the barn, forcing his attention back to the crates. But the atmosphere had changed. The air felt charged, the silence heavy with the presence of someone who had been standing just inches away from the walls moments ago. The second crate waited in the center of the barn. Canvas wrinkled, lid slightly askew, as if someone had already tried to pry it open. Titan didn't approach this one. Instead, he circled it warily, stepping back each time he neared it, nose twitching, tail stiff. A whine escaped him, low and uneasy. Aaron raised the lantern from the workbench and stepped closer. The canvas smelled faintly of damp earth and something metallic beneath it. He gripped the edge of the cloth. Pulled. The covering fell away, dust swirling upward like disturbed ghosts. The lid beneath was old, worn, a darker shade than the first crate. One of the metal latches had been pried loose, recently. The wood around it splintered, fresh enough that it hadn't darkened yet. Someone had been inside this crate. Maybe last night, or even earlier this morning. Titan backed away, whining again. Aaron felt his pulse hammer as he pressed his fingers under the lid and lifted it slowly. The wood groaned, stiff with age, then finally yielded. Inside, nothing moved, but everything changed. Bundles of old uniforms, a canvas bedroll, and beneath that, a shape, still, wrapped tightly in an army blanket, faded and stained with age. A skull peered out from beneath the frayed cloth, the empty sockets staring up as if frozen mid-scream, the remnants of a jaw partially visible. Titan let out a long, mournful howl. Aaron staggered back, hand clamped over his mouth. Not in fear. He had seen death before, too many times, but in the way the truth slowly, brutally spilled into focus. A set of dog tags lay atop the bones. He reached out, fingers trembling. Reeves, Matthew L., the missing soldier, the man from the photograph, his father's friend, the one whose dog tag in the first crate had accused someone. He lied. He shot me. Aaron's stomach knotted. He searched the crate further, moving the fabric aside. Something slid free. A folded note tucked deep in the blanket. He unfolded it. The writing was rushed, shaky, like someone wrote with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. I saw Walter pull the trigger. Aaron froze. Everything inside him stilled. "Grandpa?" he whispered. The barn felt colder, smaller, as if the walls were closing in with the weight of a truth too heavy to breathe under. Titan nudged him, sensing the collapse happening inside his chest. Aaron closed his eyes, fighting the rising panic. His breath shortened. The barn tilted. A familiar roaring filled his ears. A battlefield flashback clawing to break through. A mortar blast. A shout. Dust. Blood. Titan dragging him to safety. He slammed a hand against the crate to ground himself. Titan pressed his head against Aaron's thigh, whining softly, pulling him out of the spiral. Aaron whispered through clenched teeth. "Good boy. I'm here. I'm here." It took nearly a minute for his breathing to steady. When he stood upright again, the ranch wasn't just a place he came to sell. It was a crime scene, a graveyard, And someone out there, someone watching from the trees, knew Aaron was getting too close. A creak echoed from behind him, a soft shift of weight on wood. Aaron spun around. At the barn door, half hidden in the shadows of the tree line, stood the figure again. Tall, still, unmoving, like death waiting patiently at the edge of the pines. Titan snarled, teeth bared. But the figure didn't flee this time. It only tilted its head, slowly, as if acknowledging what Aaron had just discovered. Then, with a calmness that chilled Aaron to the bone, the man stepped backward into the forest and vanished among the trees. For several long seconds, Aaron didn't breathe. Titan stood planted in front of him like a stone wall, teeth exposed, every muscle braced. The ranch had always carried the quiet of the mountains, wind through pines, distant birds, but now even that familiar hum had died. Silence settled over Sawtooth Valley, like a warning. Finally, Aaron forced himself to step back from the doorway. He closed the barn doors and slid the heavy wooden beam across them, hearing the echo slam through the rafters. But it didn't make him feel any safer, because the danger wasn't outside anymore. It was here, in his hands, in the crate behind him, in every truth Walter Grayson tried to keep buried. Aaron wiped his palms on his jeans, steadying himself as he returned to the center of the barn. The second crate loomed open, the remains of Matthew Reeves staring up from its depth, with hollow sockets, as if begging for something. Justice, forgiveness, or maybe simply to be found after 4 decades of silence. Titan circled the crate, whining low, stepping back each time he got too close. The dog could smell things Aaron couldn't: rot, age, fear, violence. "Easy," Aaron murmured. "I'm with you." He knelt beside the crate, taking another long look at the bones. The blanket wrapped around them was army issue, heavy wool, olive drab, stained over time with earth and something darker. Whoever had placed the body here hadn't been careless. They'd been grieving, or hiding, or both. Aaron carefully lifted one edge of the blanket, revealing more fragments beneath: a rusted belt buckle, a cracked canteen, a torn sleeve with the faint outline of an old unit patch, and then, wedged deep between 2 planks near the bottom, a small folded slip of paper. Titan barked sharply the moment Aaron touched it. "I know," Aaron whispered. "Everything about this feels wrong." He unfolded the paper. The handwriting inside was messy and frantic, letters uneven, ink smudged. I saw Walter pull the trigger. Aaron's throat tightened. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "There's more to this. There has to be." But the words didn't change. Walter Grayson, the man who raised him, who taught him to ride horses, who sat quietly on the porch carving little wooden dogs for him as a child, was being accused of killing a fellow soldier, a friend. And if this note was true, someone else had witnessed it, and feared it enough to hide this message with the body. Titan nudged Aaron's shoulder, sensing the shift in his breathing. His PTSD simmered beneath the surface. Memories of sandstorms, mortar blasts, men screaming for help, Titan dragging him out from under the rubble in Helmand Province. The sharp smell of dust and blood and metal came back like a punch. Aaron shut his eyes tightly. "Not now," he whispered. He pressed one hand against Titan's neck. The dog leaned into him, anchoring him in the present. After the panic subsided, Aaron scanned the barn again, searching for anything else that might help him understand. And that's when he noticed something he'd missed earlier. Near the back wall, hidden beneath years of dirt and hay, a wood panel was slightly out of place. A faint draft seeped through the gap beneath it. Titan noticed it too. He trotted over and pawed at the seam, whining sharply. Aaron grabbed a crowbar from the bench and pried the panel loose. Dust spilled onto the floor as the board lifted. Behind it was a small compartment, almost a cavity carved into the wall. And inside that cavity lay another object, wrapped in thick oilcloth. Titan barked excitedly as if saying, "This is it. This is what we're here for." Aaron pulled the bundle out and set it on the floor. His hands shook as he unwrapped it. Inside, a knife, a small leather journal, and a military medal stained so dark the engraving was difficult to read. He lifted the knife first. The blade was old, dull, nicked with age, but the initials carved into the handle were unmistakable. W.G. Walter Grayson. Aaron's stomach twisted. He set the knife down and picked up the journal. The leather crackled as he opened the first page. The writing inside looked older, steadier. Walters. June 3rd, 1979. I made a mistake. God help me, I made a mistake. Aaron turned the page. Matthew is gone. Tom tried to stop it. And now everything is ash. Tom, his father. Aaron's hands trembled, but the next line froze him completely. If the boy grows up and returns to this land, he must know. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. They'll come looking. They always do. The barn suddenly felt too small, the valley too quiet, the shadow in the trees too close. "Walter," Aaron whispered, "what the hell did you do?" A sudden sound cracked against the back wall, a sharp snap of a twig outside. Titan whipped around and lunged toward the door, barking with furious urgency. Aaron grabbed his rifle from the workbench and sprinted to the window. He peered out, a flash of movement, a coat disappearing behind the tree line. "Hey!" Aaron yelled, throwing the barn door open. But by the time he stepped outside, the forest was empty. Only the echo of Titan's barking filled the clearing. The man, the watcher, was still out there, still waiting, still wanting something. Aaron stepped back inside the barn. Titan followed but remained tense, glancing over his shoulder every few seconds. Aaron looked at the bones again, the journal, the knife, the note accusing Walter of murder. Someone had been watching him discover each piece of the truth. Someone who feared what he would uncover. Someone who knew the story better than he did. Aaron leaned heavily against the crate, his voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" From the forest, faint and distant, a single sound carried through, the trees, the crunch of a heavy boot on frozen leaves. Then silence. Titan pressed against Aaron's leg, trembling with tension. Aaron swallowed hard. He wasn't just unraveling an old family mystery anymore. He was being hunted through it. And the man in the trees was getting closer. The barn felt smaller by the second, its shadows heavier, its air tighter, as though the walls themselves understood the danger creeping across the valley. Titan stood at the doorway, chest rising and falling fast, nails scraping against the floorboards. His instincts were screaming louder than any words could. Aaron lifted his rifle, but didn't raise it to aim. He wasn't here to fire blindly into the woods. He'd seen enough of that overseas. Sawtooth Valley wasn't Helmand Province, but right now the line between them blurred in his mind. "Easy, boy," he whispered, but Titan's growl only deepened. Outside, the woods rustled, not with wind, but with footsteps, slow, intentional, heavy enough to break twigs but careful enough not to snap branches. Whoever it was, he wanted to be heard just enough. Aaron stepped to the edge of the barn doors and peered out. The pines loomed tall, shifting in the fading light, their needles whispering like distant voices. A cold gust slid through the yard, carrying the metallic scent of early snow. Then the footsteps stopped. Titan's ears shot forward. A shape emerged at the edge of the tree line. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an old military coat faded with age. He moved with a confidence that chilled Aaron. Not sneaking, not rushing, but approaching like a man who already knew his place in this story. The stranger stepped forward, the late afternoon sun hitting his face, and Aaron froze, because the man's eyes, gray-blue, intense, unmistakable, looked just like his father's. The stranger stopped 10 paces away. "Afternoon," he said, voice low and even. "Didn't mean to spook you, though I imagine I did." Aaron swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The man looked past Aaron toward the barn, toward the crates, the bones, the truth unearthed after 40 years. His gaze tightened for a brief moment, like the sight caused him pain. Then he returned his eyes to Aaron. "My name is Colton," he said quietly. "Colton Reeves." The surname hit like a hammer. Reeves, like the tag in the crate, like the man buried beneath a wool blanket, like the name written in Walter Grayson's unfinished confession. Titan lunged forward, barking violently. Aaron grabbed his collar just in time. Colton didn't flinch, not at Titan's fury, not at the rifle in Aaron's hand, not at the barn where his father's bones lay hidden. Instead, he spoke with a strange calm. "You found him, didn't you?" Aaron felt his heartbeat in his throat. "Found who?" Colton's jaw tightened. "My father." A beat. "Matthew Reeves." Titan barked again, but this time it came from fear, not aggression. He stepped back, bumping against Aaron's leg, tail tucked low. Colton took a slow step forward. "You shouldn't have opened those crates, Aaron." Hearing his name from a stranger's, mouth made the hairs rise on the back of his neck. "How do you know who I am?" "Walter talked about you," Colton said. "For years. I used to stand at the edge of this property, listening to him split wood, waiting for him to come talk to me. Tell me the truth." His expression darkened. He never did. Wind swept across the clearing, stirring dead leaves in slow spirals. Aaron's throat tightened. "What do you want?" Colton's eyes flicked to Titan, then back to Aaron. "You weren't supposed to come back. Walter could have kept this buried if you stayed away. But now—" He shook his head slowly, almost sadly. "Now everything I've waited my entire life for is unraveling." Aaron gripped the rifle tighter. "Then talk. Tell me what's going on." For the first time, emotion cracked through Colton's voice. A mix of grief, bitterness, and something older than either of them. "My father disappeared on a mission with your father and Walter. They told the military he died a hero, but they never brought his body home." He gestured toward the barn. "And all this time he was right there." Aaron remained silent, letting the words fall like stones between them. Colton took another step closer. His eyes glinted with something that wasn't anger, but wasn't forgiveness either. "You know what the army told us? That my father died protecting his squad, that he didn't suffer." His voice dropped to a razor-thin whisper. "But what I saw in that crate tells a different story." Aaron swallowed hard. "You opened it before I did." "Yes," Colton said simply. "And Walter caught me. Twice. He told me if I ever came back, he'd finish the job." Aaron blinked. "Finish what job?" Colton's smile was thin. "The one he started in 1979. Titan stepped forward again, planting himself between the two men, growling deep enough that the boards beneath him vibrated. Colton didn't move. He simply looked at Aaron, really looked, with a kind of wounded familiarity that made something twist inside Aaron's chest. "You and I," Colton said quietly, "we share more than you know." The words rippled through Aaron like shock. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice barely more than a breath. Colton lifted his gaze, and for the first time his expression softened, not with kindness, but with tragic certainty. Your father and mine were brothers in every way except blood. He stepped closer. I grew up hearing your father's name, hearing how close they were, hearing how Walter always favored Tom Blake, even more than his own men. Another step. And when I look at you, he paused, it's like looking at the ghosts of all three of them. Aaron felt something shift deep inside him, a sense of gravity pulling him toward a truth he wasn't sure he wanted. Colton exhaled slowly. I came here for answers, not for a fight. His gaze hardened. But if you stand between me and the truth, then you're on Walter's side. Titan let out a warning bark. Colton didn't back away. Instead, he said one final sentence, one that cracked the story wide open. Your grandfather didn't just kill my father, Aaron. A beat. He tried to kill me too. The valley went still. Aaron's breath froze. Titan's growl cut off abruptly. Colton took one step backward. We'll finish this, tomorrow, before sunset, at the creek. And then he turned, walked into the trees, and disappeared into the forest as quietly as he had come, leaving Aaron with a revelation that shook him to his core. This wasn't just about Walter's past. It was about his father, his family, and now, him. And whatever waited at the creek tomorrow would change everything. Aaron barely slept that night. The wind clawed at the windows. The floorboards popped and settled like something pacing inside the walls. Titan stayed awake the whole time, head resting on Aaron's boots, lifting his gaze at every creak and shifting shadow. Colton Reeves's words replayed again and again. Your grandfather didn't just kill my father. He tried to kill me too. Dawn came harsh and colorless. A thin layer of frost coated the porch, the yard, the fence posts, everything touched by the cold breath of the Sawtooth Range. Aaron stepped outside, feeling the brittle ground crack beneath his boots. Titan stayed close, unusually quiet, almost solemn. They walked toward the creek long before sunset. If danger was coming, Aaron wasn't going to walk into it blind in the dark. He'd spent too many years in uniform to give an unknown enemy the advantage of nightfall. Titan led the way, nose low, scanning every inch of soil, every fallen branch. The path curved between two tall pines and dipped toward the valley floor, where the creek snaked through a shallow ravine. The water ran half-frozen, patches of ice catching the gray sky like shattered mirrors. Aaron slowed his steps, listening for anything unusual. Nothing but wind, water, and his own heartbeat in his ears. But Titan heard something first. His head snapped toward the north bank, ears stiff. A sharp bark broke from his throat, loud, urgent, almost panicked. Aaron lifted his rifle, stepping forward cautiously. Colton Reeves emerged from behind a fallen tree. But this wasn't the calm, controlled man from yesterday. Something wild glimmered in his eyes, something desperate, like he'd spent the whole night wrestling with ghosts that wouldn't let him breathe. He wasn't armed, or at least not visibly. But the tension in the way he held his shoulders, the tremor in his hands, Aaron knew that look. A man ready to unravel. Aaron, Colton called out, voice hoarse. You came early. I don't like surprises, Aaron replied. Titan stood beside him, growling deep. Colton's gaze drifted to the dog. That animal's loyal, I can tell. My father used to say a man's truth lives in his dog. He swallowed hard. But our fathers, they didn't tell the truth, did they? Aaron didn't answer. Colton stepped closer. Did you read Walter's journal? He asked quietly. Yes. Then you know what he did. I know what he wrote, Aaron corrected. That's not the same. Colton's eyes hardened. He murdered my father, and he would have covered it up forever if I hadn't seen it happen. Titan barked sharply. 2 quick barks, his warning signal. Stay back, Aaron said. Colton stopped, lifting his hands. "I'm not here to hurt you." But Titan didn't buy it. He lunged forward, placing himself between Aaron and Colton, teeth exposed, fur bristling. "Easy, boy," Aaron muttered, but Titan wouldn't budge. Colton's voice cracked. "You think your father was innocent in all this? You think Tom Blake didn't have a hand in it?" The words hit Aaron like a punch. "Leave my father out of this." "I can't," Colton snapped. "You and I are tied together through what they did, what they dragged us into long before we were born." Titan growled louder, stiffening. The creek gurgled softly underneath the tension. Colton reached into his coat. Titan lunged. A gun flashed. A single, deafening shot cracked through the valley. Titan yelped. Aaron's breath stopped cold. Titan stumbled backward, fur ripping near his shoulder, a dark streak of red appearing beneath his coat. The dog didn't fall, but the wound was deep enough to send him staggering, teeth clenched in pain. "Titan!" Aaron shouted, dropping to one knee. The dog forced himself upright, staggering, snarling with fury, not backing down, not giving an inch. Colton stood frozen, gun trembling in his hand. I didn't mean," he stammered, voice breaking. "I thought he was coming at me." Aaron rose slowly, fury building like thunder inside his chest. "You brought a gun," he said coldly. "You planned this." "No," Colton whispered. "I brought it for protection. I didn't know what I'd find. Walter had men watching me near the end. I thought you might be one of them." Titan barked weakly, but stood his ground, limping, bleeding. Aaron advanced cautiously. "Put the weapon down." Colton shook his head, breath ragged. "You don't understand. If you open that last crate, if you keep digging, it'll destroy both of us." His voice grew frantic. "You have no idea what your grandfather did. No idea what our fathers—" Aaron stepped closer. Colton panicked. The barrel jerked upward. A second shot tore through the air. Titan leapt sideways, knocking Aaron off balance, saving him again. The rifle clattered to the ground as the two men collided at the creek's edge. They grappled in the mud, slipping against frozen earth. The cold water splashed their boots. Colton fought like a man drowning in his own past. Aaron fought like a man trying to survive his. The gun discharged, a muffled crack, echoing through the trees. Colton gasped once, then fell still. His body went slack, collapsing onto the muddy bank. The gun slipped from his hand and landed half-submerged in the icy creek. Aaron stumbled back, panting, staring at the motionless form in front of him. "Colton," he whispered. But there was no answer, only the creek flowing quietly beneath the silence. Titan limped over, pressing his head against Aaron's leg, eyes filled with pain yet still alert, still guarding him even now. Aaron knelt beside him, hands shaking as he checked the wound. "Easy, boy. I've got you." Blood stained Titan's fur, but the dog leaned into him with all the strength he had left, breathing shallow but steady. Aaron bowed his head. He hadn't meant for this to happen. Neither had Titan, neither had Colton. But the land had claimed another man, just as it had before, just as it had warned. Aaron felt the weight of it settle on him, a familiar heaviness from another life, another battlefield. He lifted Titan into his arms slowly, whispering, "You saved me again. I'm not losing you. Not now." The valley was quiet, too quiet, because the past wasn't finished with them, and today it had drawn blood. As Aaron carried Titan toward the ranch, Colton Reeves lay still by the creek. A life cut short by a truth that refused to stay buried, and the story that began 40 years ago had just claimed its next chapter. The walk back to the ranch felt twice as long as it should have. Aaron carried Titan in both arms, the dog's weight heavy but steady, his breath warm against Aaron's neck. Every few steps, Titan stirred, determined not to be a burden, determined to stay alert even through pain. but Aaron held him tighter each time. "You're all right, buddy. I've got you," he whispered, voice raw from everything the morning had taken. The valley was silent, the kind of silence that came after something irreversible had happened. The sky hung gray and swollen, the mountain peaks fading behind a curtain of distant snow. Sawtooth Valley had always been beautiful, but now it felt like a witness, holding its breath, storing its secrets in the cold air. By the time Aaron reached the porch, his arms shook. He set Titan gently on an old wool blanket, checking the wound again. The bleeding had slowed. The bullet had grazed more than buried itself. Painful, yes, but survivable. "Good boy. You're stronger than any soldier I ever knew," he murmured, brushing the dirt from Titan's fur. Titan nudged Aaron's hand, leaning into him despite the hurt. Only then did the weight of what had happened at the creek settle fully across Aaron's shoulders. He sank onto the porch step, elbows on his knees, hands over his face. The image of Colton falling replayed in flashes. The shock in his eyes, the slip of his footing, the final silence. "I didn't want this," Aaron whispered into the emptiness. Titan pushed his nose against Aaron's knee, as if reminding him he wasn't alone. Not in the fight, not in the guilt, not in anything. Aaron drew a slow, trembling breath. "We have to finish this," he said softly. "For him. For all of them." He stood, feeling older than his 41 years. Inside the house, the air felt colder than when he had left. The shutters rattled in the wind, and somewhere upstairs a board creaked under a weight that shouldn't have been there. Aaron paused at the threshold, instincts flaring. But nothing moved. Nothing breathed. Whatever presence haunted the house was content to watch, for now. He grabbed a lantern and headed for the barn. The sun was dipping low, painting the valley in washed-out gold. Shadows stretched long across the field, reaching toward the barn door like fingertips. Titan limped behind him, refusing to let Aaron out of his sight. Every few feet, the dog glanced over his shoulder, tracing something invisible in the tree line. Remnants of an old threat that wasn't entirely gone. When they reached the barn, Aaron stopped. The door, previously closed, now hung slightly open. His pulse jolted. He had not left it that way. He lifted the lantern. "Stay close," he whispered. Titan pressed against his leg, growling low. They pushed the door open. The smell hit first: dust, oil, and something older. Something like time itself cracking open. The lantern light glowed across the two massive wooden crates, the cracked concrete floor, and the rafters where birds once nested before years of neglect claimed the place. But now, the neglect was gone. Footprints, fresh ones, cut across the dust toward the far corner. Aaron followed them carefully. Titan sniffed the ground, his growl deepening. Something was buried beneath the dirt floor. Something Titan had sensed from the beginning. Aaron knelt, brushing the soil away until his fingers struck something solid. Wood. Weathered. Hand-carved. Smaller than the crates. Hidden deliberately. He dug more until he could lift it. A small wooden box, sealed tight, its hinges corroded but intact. A carved initial marked the lid. W.G. Walter Grayson. Aaron's breath caught. He opened it slowly. Inside lay photographs. Old, curled at the edges, fading from years of being unseen. Titan stepped closer, resting his chin on Aaron's shoulder as if he needed to see too. The first photo made Aaron's heart falter. His father, Tom Blake, stood side by side with Matthew Reeves, not distant, not cold, not enemies, smiling, like brothers. The next photo showed Walter Grayson in uniform, younger than Aaron had ever seen him, hand resting protectively on the shoulders of both men. The last photo was the hardest. A boy, maybe 6 years old, standing between Matthew Reeves and Tom Blake, looking like he belonged to both families. Colton. Aaron sank onto a nearby crate, letting the truth wash over him in waves. His father had known Colton's father. They had served together. They had been close, closer than anyone ever told him. Titan whimpered softly, feeling Aaron's unrest. Aaron lifted a yellowed envelope from the bottom of the box. Written on the front, in Walter's unmistakable handwriting, "If my grandson ever returns, give him the truth." His throat tightened. He unfolded the letter. Walter's shaky script filled the page. They were brothers in everything but blood, and when the secret came, the truth neither of them could bear. I did what I thought would protect us all, but a man cannot bury truth without burying himself too. The lantern flickered as if moved by breath. Aaron lowered the letter, eyes burning. "What did you do, old man?" he whispered. Titan pressed against him, sensing the unraveling. Outside, a gust of wind slammed the barn door shut with a hollow echo, rattling the beams. The shadows seemed to pulse, breathe, shift with memory. This wasn't just a ranch. It wasn't just family land. It was a vault built from guilt and silence, waiting for someone brave, or unlucky, enough to unlock it. Aaron gathered the photos, the letter, the fragile pieces of a story broken decades before he was born. "Come on, boy," he said softly. "We're not done yet." Titan limped beside him, loyal even through pain, as they stepped out of the barn and into the settling twilight. Behind them, the barn groaned. Like the building itself exhaled after holding its breath too long. The ghosts of Sawtooth Valley were awake now, and they weren't going back to sleep. Night settled over the ranch like a heavy blanket, thick enough to smother breath, thin enough to let every fear crawl through its seams. The lantern flame flickered on the porch as Aaron cleaned Titan's wound a second time, hands steady but heart trembling with the weight of everything he'd learned, and everything still hiding beneath the soil of this land. Titan lay still, trusting him completely, though his breath hitched every few minutes from pain. The dog's eyes never left Aaron's face, as if afraid that if he blinked, Aaron might vanish into the same darkness that swallowed Colton. "You saved my life again," Aaron whispered, "just like always." Titan nudged his hand gently, signaling he was ready to move again even though he wasn't. That was who he was, a protector through every storm, even when his own legs shook. Aaron stood slowly, staring toward the barn where the hidden box had been found, where truth seemed to leak from every board and nail. But something else pulled at him now, an intuition, a whisper in the back of his mind. Or maybe it wasn't his intuition. Maybe it was Titan's. The dog pushed himself up on shaky legs, sniffed the air, then limped toward the old well near the edge of the property. Not the new one by the house. The old stone ring half collapsed and swallowed by weeds, the one Walter Grayson had fenced off decades ago with the sign, "Do not approach, structure unsafe." Titan stopped at the fence, growling deep in his chest. Aaron followed, lantern casting long shadows across the cold ground. His breath fogged in front of him, merging with the dim glow of the light. "What is it, boy?" he asked softly. Titan pawed at the frozen dirt beside the well. Once, twice, then again harder. His nails scraped something beneath the soil, and he looked up with urgency, whining through clenched teeth. Aaron's pulse quickened. He knelt beside Titan and brushed away the top layer of dirt until something rough and rubbery emerged. A waterproof bag, old but intact, tied shut with military paracord. The kind only field operators used. Aaron's throat tightened. Titan had dug up more than a clue. He had dug up intent. He lifted the bag carefully and untied it. Inside there were two things: a metal dog tag and a worn leather journal. The tag read, "Matthew Reeves, U.S. Army OPOS Catholic." Aaron swallowed hard. This belonged to Colton's father. Titan whined again, nudging the journal with his nose. Aaron opened it, fingers brushing pages yellowed by time, stained by water and sweat, and something heavier: regret. The handwriting inside was Walter Grayson's, unmistakable even through the shaky lines and ink blots. Aaron read the first lines under his breath. "If you found this, it means the truth finally has nowhere left to hide." He turned to the next page. "Matthew Reeves was not just a soldier under my command. He was more than that to Tom. And when Matthew learned the truth about the child he fathered, he wanted to come clean." Aaron froze. Titan's ears flicked, sensing his tension. Aaron kept reading. But the truth threatened everything. Tom begged him to wait, pleaded with him to protect the boy until he could bring him home himself. Matthew refused. They argued near the creek. The gun went off in the struggle. Aaron's breath hitched. The journal continued. "I wasn't there when Matthew fell, but I was the one who found him. And in Tom's eyes, I saw a man break, saw him go somewhere he never returned from." Aaron felt something sharp twist in his chest. His father. His strong, steady father. Breaking. The journal shook slightly in Aaron's hands as he forced himself to read the next lines. "Tom asked me to protect the boy, to protect Colton. He said no child deserved the weight of their father's mistakes. And neither did you, Aaron." He felt the world tilt, breath slipping away. Walter knew about Colton. Tom knew about Colton. Everyone had known except the two sons who'd inherited the ruins of the decision. "I buried Matthew because Tom couldn't bear to look at what had happened. I hid Colton because the world wouldn't have been kind to the truth. And I raised you as if the past had died with him." Aaron closed his eyes. Titan nudged his forearm gently, grounding him. The last lines were written in a different hand, shakier, weaker, as if Walter had written them near death. "When you return, find Colton. Tell him he was loved. Tell him his father died trying to come home to him. Tell him Tom was not his enemy." A tear slipped down Aaron's cheek. Titan pressed his head against Aaron's chest. "But it's too late," Aaron whispered. "He's gone. He's gone, and he'll never know." His voice cracked. The wind shifted softly through the valley, carrying the weight of decades across the cold earth. The wellstones moaned under the changing temperature, like the land itself grieving. Aaron closed the journal slowly. "We can't fix what happened," he said quietly, "but we can stop it from burying anyone else." He lifted Titan gently. "Come on, boy. Let's go inside." Titan leaned against him, bleeding but unbroken, determined to follow Aaron through every shadow. As they crossed the yard, the lantern swinging in Aaron's hand, a strange hush fell across the valley, as if the land held its breath again, this time with relief, because the truth wasn't hiding anymore. Titan had dug it up, and now nothing would ever be the same. Morning came slow to Sawtooth Valley, creeping in pale and cold across the ridgeline. Frost clung to the barn roof, and the sky shifted from charcoal gray to washed-out blue. Aaron stood on the porch, the journal in one hand, the dog tag in the other, feeling the quiet settle around him like a second skin. Titan lay beside him, shoulder wrapped in clean bandages. The dog was tired, sore, stiff, but awake, alert, eyes following Aaron's every move with the steadiness of someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side. "Good boy," Aaron whispered, kneeling to rest a hand on Titan's head. "We're almost there. Just one more thing left to do." Titan leaned into his touch. The truth was no longer a ghost. It was carved into the pages Walter left behind, into the bones hidden in the barn, into the silence that had stretched across 40 years of pain. And Aaron knew, deep in his chest, deeper than any scar, that the truth didn't belong hidden anymore. He called Linda Porter just after dawn. Her old sedan rattled up the gravel road an hour later, pulling into the yard with a soft crunch of tires. She stepped out, breath forming clouds in the freezing air. "You sounded shaken on the phone," she said gently. Aaron motioned for her to follow. They walked toward the barn together, Titan limping behind them but refusing to be left out. Inside, the lantern from the night before still sat on the crate. Wick burned low. The air felt different now, lighter, resigned, like the barn itself knew its secrets were finally ready to come out. Aaron set the journal, photos, and dog tag on the first crate. "That everything?" Linda asked, her voice careful, steady. "No," Aaron said quietly. "Not everything." He moved to the second crate, the one cracked open, the one holding the remains buried under years of silence. He lifted the canvas gently. Beneath it, wrapped in military cloth, the bones lay still. Linda covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Aaron nodded. "Matthew Reeves." "And Colton?" she whispered. Aaron's jaw tightened. "He's gone." Linda closed her eyes, grief settling over her features. She rested a hand briefly on Titan's head, as if the dog could somehow absorb some of the hurt. "What do you want to do, Hannah?" she asked, voice soft. "The right thing," Aaron said. "What Walter should have done. What my father couldn't." They spent the next hour gathering everything. The journal, the photos, the dog tag, every letter, every scrap of the past that had shaped the nightmare unfolding on this land. Aaron wrapped Matthew's remains with quiet reverence, his hands slow and deliberate, as if each movement honored the years stolen from two families. Titan watched with solemn eyes. The dog didn't whine, didn't bark. He simply stayed close, sensing the gravity of every breath, every silence. When they finished, Aaron carried the evidence toward Linda's car. The morning sun caught the frost on the ground, scattering it into tiny sparks of light. It felt like walking through memory, fragile, shimmering, fleeting. Linda loaded the last box into her trunk. "I'll take this straight to the sheriff," she said, "then to the county coroner. The state will handle the rest." Aaron nodded. "Aaron," she added gently, "you're doing the right thing." He gave a tired, grateful smile, maybe for the first time in a long while. Linda hesitated. "What will you do now?" Aaron looked toward the barn, the fields, the mountains rising like blue ghosts around the valley. He breathed deep. "I'll finish what I came here for." Linda placed a hand on his arm. "Call me if you need anything." "I will." She drove off slowly, dust rising behind her wheels until her car disappeared around the bend. Aaron stood alone with Titan again. The valley was silent, not menacing this time, but peaceful, like the land was finally exhaling after years of holding its breath. "Come on, boy," Aaron said softly. They walked back to the barn one last time. Aaron closed the doors gently, then pulled a wooden sign from behind the tool rack. He wiped the dust off with his sleeve, revealing words he'd carved only minutes earlier. "Do not open, the truth rests here." He hung the sign on the door, fastening it with rusted nails. Titan sat beside him, tail thumping faintly against the ground. Aaron looked toward the horizon, where the sun finally broke through the clouds, painting the valley in gentle gold. "It's done," he whispered. Titan nudged his hand, eyes warm. "No," Aaron corrected softly. "We're done here." He walked back to the house, Titan following at his side. They loaded the truck slowly, quietly, with the care of two souls worn thin, but no longer broken. The engine started with a low rumble. Aaron took one last look at the ranch, the place that had held his childhood, his ghosts, his father's hidden pain, and now, finally, the truth. He didn't hate it. He didn't fear it. He didn't belong to it anymore. The truck rolled down the dirt road, tires crunching softly, Titan resting his head on Aaron's lap as the valley faded behind them. The mountains stood tall in the rearview mirror. The truth stayed where it belonged. And for the first time in decades, Sawtooth Valley finally slept. If this story moved you in any way, let me know with the simplest comment you can drop. Just type 1 if you stayed until the end, or 0 if Titan is now your favorite dog on the channel. Your comment helps this story reach more people, and it tells me you want more journeys like this. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Another veteran, another loyal dog, and another secret waiting in the dark. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care of your heart and your dog.